Madam Chair. Thank you. I want to first and foremost thank my colleagues for their support of a previous item that dealt with food and nutrition. That item obviously passed unanimously, and that has now provided an opportunity and a platform for businesses to have greater and expanded access to our food and nutrition program from a fiscal standpoint. I would also like to commend the superintendent and his staff. I had a very engaging, productive, and meaningful discussion with Mr. Bueno, Dr. Pace, Ms. Parham. Who else was in that meeting? You're in there as well, Mr. DeBarros. I think we had a meeting. Mr. I said you first, Bueno, Dr. Pace, DeBarros, Penny Parham, to really look at the data. The data on the participation is horrific. It is horrific. And once again, not to revisit it, I started out by thanking the board, not for board action, not for board action. Madam Chair, not for board action. That has been an area that has been somewhat clandestine. There's not been a lot of discourse around food and nutrition from a fiscal standpoint. And when you look at the numbers and the data points, the administration was very, very candid, very direct, and almost, as in my words, Madam Chair, unapologetic. And what I mean by that is unapologetic about how unacceptable it was. They were not trying to obfuscate the issue. They said, this is not acceptable. We have to do better because the data points do not lie. One would represent, obviously, that that could have been a discourse, but I think when there's something that speaks to hundreds of millions of dollars, speaks to a Florida City to County Line Road issue, and quite frankly speaks to our policy position, our paradigms, our principles, and our dedication to what is right, rightful, and righteous, it does require board action, and board action led to that particular discussion. That conversation will continue. That conversation, those updates will continue, but the numbers were, once again, abysmal. Colleagues, if you think the numbers on the GOB were abysmal, the numbers and the percentages of participation in food and nutrition were even more horrific. We're talking in some cases zero minority participation, zero in some cases, zero. And we're talking about in excess of $100 million annually. So I'm looking forward to some progress and some traction in that regards. Obviously, when you visit schools, and those of us who have served as school leaders and those of us who spend time at schools, they often say the first two places you stop when you become a principal is obviously the main office, and the second stop you visit is, let's see, Dr. Bendros Mendengal, the cafeteria?
Oh, yes.
Cafeteria.
Yes.
Cafeteria. The office staff, the cafeteria staff, and the custodial staff, they'll give you the rundown, and they'll give you the get down on what's going on in the school. But if you are a real principal, you don't have the luxury of extended lunch breaks, Red Lobster, nice restaurants. You are actually having a working lunch, Madam Chair. You're eating with the children, you're spending time, you become familiar with the day-to-day operations of the school, and you utilize that. So you want to make sure the menu is on point. If you can't eat it, then the children should not have to eat it. And myself and another colleague on this board have the unique distinction, Board Member Fraga, of having children in the school system. And all of you have also children and grandchildren, and so you have a vested interest as well. But it almost becomes deeply personal when your own children, to a greater extent, will not consume. Now, this is not an issue that has come from Zoe. Zoe made it very, very clear years ago what she was going to eat and what she was not going to eat. So that's not Zoe's issue. But on the heels of that item, people somewhat got confused. They thought that the food and nutrition item was not about economics. They thought it was about what? The menu. So from that, I started to receive feedback about what is being served to our children. So I wanted to just share with my colleagues this is about maybe 2 or 3 out of about 20 plus images that a parent, citizen, whatever you want to call it, had been loading me up since this item passed about what the menu looks like in the schools for children. And for those who want to know, there is a board item already written. So I made a decision not to release it for obvious reasons, because the discourse and the confidence and what we're doing with respect to the other issue gives me a great degree of confidence. And this is not new. I usually bring issues up under new business. If you want to go and look at the tapes, I bring things up under new business. We have a conversation, and if there's no traction, no movement, then let's have at some board action. So new business is a good segue for us to just take a look at what's being served to our children. And I won't eat it. I'm just telling you right now, I won't eat it. I don't know what is the process, what is the updates, where have we gone with respect to reviewing the menus, exploring, expanding it, and I don't want to catch Dr. Pace or anybody off guard, but this is new business. So I'm left with this particular platform to have a conversation. Can we maybe talk about or give insight as it relates to how do we update the menus? Do we assess, do we survey what the parents, what the children feel about what's being served? And this obviously is restricted to the elementary school students, and I want to say for the record very clearly, this is not my daughter's school. This is a person, I don't know who this person is, let me say that. This was sent to me, and I held it, and I shared with them that I would talk about it today in committee. I told them I would. So if they're watching, where's the camera? Man of my word. But this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation. Yes. Maybe take a look at this, and if we can have someone to give an update as relates to what's the process for us reviewing, when was the last review, when was the last update. It's not a matter of finances right now, because I think the federal government has kicked in very fervently as it relates to free and reduced lunch and things of that nature, meals being free. But if there's no traction, I want the, and I'm saying this with some degree of restraint from emoting, I want the record to reflect that I said something about it and I did something about it. When I'm sitting in my rocking chair, my children said, what did you think about the meals? Was it a problem? I said, well, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, God blessed him to be in a position, he said something, he did something, and here's the receipt. And as my colleague Rojas said, you know, if I get board members to vote it up or down, they can, but I'm going to not simply leave it to the devices of a conversation when this is a Florida City to County Line Road issue that affects all of our children. So I'm kind of integrating the importance of board action from time to time, but you can be assured that this is a precursor to a board item that is already written. I have a couple, several, I have 15 right now just written, and they will always be timely. They will always be timely. So the notion that the administration is working on this, they've already done that, they have a plan for this. What's the plan for this? What's the work being done on this area? And if there is some, let's have a conversation. If not, I'll have a conversation later on and we can talk about it. So is there any insight about that particular process relative to the food and nutrition program through the chair?
Yes, before you speak, Dr. Pace, I want to thank Dr. Gallen for bringing this forth, because I too have been contacted and I was going to address this issue as well. Thank you so much, sir, for bringing in the pictures and everything. There are a lot of very unhappy people out there right now because of exactly what was just explained by Dr. Gallen. The food that is being given is something that most of us would not want to have for lunch. And this simply cannot be, because if our children are not receiving the nutrition they should be, they're not going to excel academically or in any other way. And so not only what he alluded to, but I was also addressed on the paper plates that are being used, the utensils that are being used. The actual food that is being now served to our children is something that is addressed at the Wellness Committee. I know this has been discussed at Wellness because it's come back to me. They've even had opportunity to taste pizza and different foods that they have brought in there that are appealing to children but are healthy at the same time. I don't know. I'm not at that committee, but I've been told that a lot of recommendations have been made, but they have not been followed up on because of the situation, the financial issues and whatnot. But we cannot cut corners when it comes to our children's nutrition. So again, thank you, Dr. Gallen, because I was very concerned about this particular issue as well. And looking forward to hearing from you, sir.
Good afternoon, once again. Through the chair, in regards to, I want to answer it in two parts, so I'll go in reverse order. Of course, we have the School Health Advisory Committee in which we take their input and listen to what advice they're giving us. However, the most important constituent in this case is the student. And the feedback we get from the student is the most paramount feedback we can receive. And if you can recall in our strategic blueprint for 21-26, that is actually one of the areas that we highlighted of an area that we're going to work to make improvements. Through the climate survey, we were able to get feedback as well as through focus groups from our students in some of the products that they're pleased with, some of the meal choices that they are happy with, but also some of the meal choices that they're not too pleased with. And unfortunately, the example is provided, I'm assuming, in that picture. And I too have received emails from parents or students about a meal selection or something that was served on a day in which they were not pleased with, and they've sent a picture. And we addressed this with our food and nutrition department on how could this happen, why, and how do we correct it. So yes, that is an ongoing process of not only long-term feedback through our climate survey, but short-term feedback. As you know, we have to meet the requirements of the United States Department of Agriculture when it comes to serving particular food choices, and we stay at that standard level. However, looking at it in a two-pronged category, satisfying our students. And me having daughters in school who I want them to eat school lunch, and I've never heard any complaints about it, but I want every single student in Miami-Dade County Public Schools to be pleased with their lunch choice and their breakfast choices every single day. And when we don't meet that mark, then there's improvement to be made. As you said, Dr. Gallen, we did look at what we discussed and how we can improve the choices and the vendors we work with going forward. And I think the combination of both in the future, immediate future and long-term future, will actually improve instances in which students are not happy or not pleased with the choices that you've described. Even if it may be isolated incidents, that's not acceptable, because we know a child being fed is one of the most important acts of the day. And for many of our students, sometimes the meal they get at school is unfortunately the only meal. So we continue to get feedback, and we are aware of the menu options that are very popular. And we address the menu options that may not have such the favor of our popular items, and we make adjustments on an ongoing basis. We are able to look at the menu options monthly, and I thank Ms. Penny Parham for teaching me a lot of this in a short time, and make adjustments to those menu options with our vendor. However, as you stated, there's still work to be done so we don't have to receive any negative feedback about the food that is distributed. And I know Mr. Cohn has popped up behind me, but I hope that at least answered your question through the chair.
Yes. Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes, and I appreciate that, Dr. Pace, and I always appreciate the transparency, unbeknownst to me, that you've gotten pictures and you understand that, so I'm glad to hear other colleagues have as well. But I would also say that it's not always simply about just the menu options. It's also about the presentation and about the, when I say presentation, how it looks, from temperature, from it being cold, it's the overall program. And this is not, let me be very clear, this is not an indictment on our cafeteria staff whatsoever. I want to be very, very clear about that. I don't want anybody to misconstrue that as under no circumstances. This is about the framework and the program and the process and our efforts of intentionality about doing this work, especially at the levels and in the schools and communities where there may or may not be a level of advocacy and or any options. Many of our children and grandchildren have options. If they don't like it, we prepare it. You know what I mean? But we know in a district with over 70+% of our students on free and reduced lunch, this is an equity and an access and, quite frankly, a social justice issue, because some people simply don't have the means, so they can't take lunches to school. I don't even want to go down what my day-to-day operation is in the morning, preparing for, as you know, lunch and also aftercare and everything else. I mean, I have to respond to a menu. And I'll say this parenthetically, even those of us who can get it right, I'm guilty. I'm gonna just say this, go on a limb. It shook my conscience as a parent. We own it. We own it as parents. For the first 9 weeks, my child had sandwiches every day. I thought we were getting it right. I thought we were doing something right. We got the Pendraws Mendengar, we get the sandwiches, we get to cut it up nice, and sometimes she wants it in half, sometimes she wants it in 4s. She wants a little mayonnaise and a little dash of mustard on it. She wants the turkey and the ham. If I'm preparing it, she only getting turkey. She's not getting any ham, but she has a whole thing during the first week, the second week, and the third week. Get to the 8th week, she said, I'm tired of sandwiches. And I'm being very transparent, as if we're sitting at my kitchen table. It shook me. I failed her. We failed. What did she see? She saw the children. Maybe I'm a little antiquated. She saw the children with these thermos things that keep hot food.
Yeah.
Where have I been? I went on Amazon, Ms. Pizzino, and it said, let's go. I said, well, no, let me take it. If all else fails, you go to the favorite store, Target. Go to Target. And it had this container, and it says it keeps it hot from 3 to 5 hours. So you put it in the microwave, whatever that is going to be, at 7:45, and you know you're good at least until 11:30, 12. No more sandwiches. No more sandwiches. Out of the mouth of babes. What about those children who don't have that level of advocacy, and what about those families who don't have the capacity or the resources? They depend on us to give them variety, to give the right presentation, the right temperature. And in some cases, as you indicated, if we miss it for one, that's one too many. So, yeah, it's deeply personal for me, but it's not personal for mine, but I have those reflective stories that I know the reality of it. And this is something that was brought to me by a constituent, and I'm hearing from others, and even yourself. So I'm interested in how we can extend this conversation, but more so not the conversation, but what are we going to do about it moving forward for all children and all families. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pace, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Through the chair, no, ma'am, on this topic, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Perez.
Yes.
Oh,
This-
and I
this
see
is-
Dr. Bendros Menigo, so Dr. Perez first, and then Dr. Bendros Menigo.
These pictures are frankly shocking. And I have never, I've been in schools in all of our districts, I have never seen something like this, which appears not to have a protein. I don't know what these are, if these are supposed to be something that was like these with a little cellophane over them. I think it would be very important for the board to hear from Ms. Parham, who is our guru, the go-to person, and the advisory committee, the food and nutrition has always been something that I attend, that the chair is my appointment, and I am frankly very shocked, don't understand. I always like to give, we need to hear the other side. Is this something that someone said, oh, you had this left over, can I take it home, kind of thing, because it just does not appear that this is the kind of food that any of our schools serve. If it is, it is absolutely shocking. And I think it would be very important for us to hear from Ms. Parham, because not only that, but I know of the rigors that our school cafeterias have. Every school cafeteria has a manager with specific orders, with specific employees. It's like a little group within the cafeteria. It's not the principal. It's not just the principal. The manager of the cafeteria is under the leadership of the principal, but there's also the accountability of that person as well. So this, I've never seen anything like this. So I am shocked, and I certainly would like to hear, I think, from Ms. Parham to be fair, because we also don't know who took the pictures or what these pictures are of. And it's certainly not acceptable. Now, I will tell you that I have for many years been concerned about what we serve the children and how it is served. I've spoken to you about even teaching children how to use forks and knives. That it's a lost art because of sanitation. We can only give children a sport, like what is it, a spork, or exactly, that is what prisoners get, and I understand it's for insurance purposes, and I understand too that they don't even use them because it takes so long to take the plastic off of them, that they don't even use the one utensil that they're using, and nobody supervises them if they're using it. They use their hands, so it's all finger foods. No matter how delicious and beautiful you serve it, the large majority of the children are only going to eat what they can pick up with their fingers. And this is a concern to me because when they're older, they don't know how to use a fork and knife. And I understand that this is part of what the parents have to teach in the later meals, and we can only do what we can do. But these pictures are something new. And I certainly would like to hear more and have that explanation, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Dr. Pacer?
Through the chair, and I'll be happy to set up for Ms. Parham to follow up with any of the board members to give more insight. What I would like to add is when we do receive these complaints, we do take another step that I didn't explain before, which is we have our supervisors over our cafeterias. And when we do get these complaints, the supervisor is deployed out immediately, and they are sent there to do professional development with our cafeteria managers as well as our cafeteria workers, whether that's for a 1-day, 2-day, or 5-day period, to ensure the mistakes or the pictures that we receive or the complaints are corrected immediately. So I do want to at least reiterate that process is in place and is continuously used. However, as stated before, any child not receiving a good meal is not our standard. It's not acceptable. It's from product to preparation to presentation to, being an enjoyable, palatable meal, and that's our expectation. So I want to assure the board that this is something we continuously not only get long-term feedback, but short-term feedback. And I'll be happy to schedule myself, Ms. Parham, Mr. Cohn, to give any further details to ensure that we are, this is a top priority in improving this process. I wanted to add that.
Dr. Pace, thank you. However, the cafeteria managers, I don't believe, are the ones that are making the determination as to what the meal that is going to be served is comprised of. I believe that that comes from a higher authority. And so I know that cafeteria managers do their very, very best. And I've seen them in action, having been in a school all the years that I have been, but I don't believe they're the ones that are making the decisions. The question is, why are we serving what we're serving right now to the children? I don't think it's as isolated as maybe we may want to think, because I've been hearing a lot of concerns and a lot of complaints about what is out there, just like Dr. Gallen and I'm sure probably others here on the board. So I too would love to hear from Ms. Parham, Mr. Cohn, yourself, and everyone else involved in the process. And I don't know if my colleagues would like to have you, since I think that probably all of us want to hear what's happening, that in lieu of individual meetings on you all, let's just have a presentation here at the next committee meeting that we have for next month, or at the board meeting if necessary. I honestly, a month is a long time to go for these students to continue getting these meals. So possibly at the board meeting, we can have a presentation made at one point during the 8 items from the superintendent, let's say. But we definitely need to address this. And again, I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Gallen, for bringing it forth. I also wanted to address this because it's been brought to my attention very much so as well. And like Dr. Perez also claimed, it is appalling to see that we're, serving these meals, if indeed that is what is happening. Dr. Gallen, sir?
Madam Chair, just a quick point of order, just so I'm sorry, I just want the attorney, I appreciate what you said, but I just want to make sure for the board's consideration that I don't know if such a request or direction may have to come through a different means unless the administration chooses to voluntarily provide that presentation. I don't want it to be construed that through this discussion we have now given some direction or made a request for such. I just want to make sure that we are covered in that regards. Mr. Attorney, would you just opine on that? And I just want to make sure that we're covered.
Yes, through the chair. Typically, when it comes to, providing a response to a board member's question, if it doesn't involve the expenditure of resources, then typically that's appropriate, that's fine, if they're prepared to respond. However, it does require the expenditure of resources, then of course that would be something that would typically require board action unless the administration voluntarily agrees to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. I think Madam Chair.
Madam Chair wanted to speak at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it's so distressing that I don't think I'm going to say too much except perhaps ask a question. How did we get here? And I know that doesn't require an answer, obviously. We were for years told that we serve healthy nutritional meals. I cannot believe what I saw this, when I seen this. I can't believe the conversation we're having. And I think it's so important that the board, as was mentioned, we're going to spend time discussing this. There should be certainly a board item, there should be whatever, and this is not directing staff. This is something that we are responsible for. There's nothing wrong with telling staff that we need a presentation, or we need to discuss this, that we are going to be the group that is responsible for bringing an item to discuss this. This is not giving anyone staff from the superintendent's office. This is about our responsibility, what we do with our children. So I don't have any problem if anybody doesn't like what we're saying. I really don't have one problem whatsoever. If they want to call it that we're directing stuff, no, we are doing what we're elected to do. It's taking care of our students one way or another, and this is the most horrible thing I've seen in a long time. I can't believe it. Honestly, I don't believe it. I'm so embarrassed, actually, as a member of the board, and today as the chair of the board. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Bendros-Mendengo? Yes, ma'am?
Don't ever let the chair go before me, ever. She said it all. She said it all. I think we might need to take a field trip, Madam Chair, and I, and anyone else, because I've got one of the best schools in the district across the street.
Yes.
And I would question, I see you, I would question, is this served in that high chef school? I would put money, as I told a group of kids this morning, I would put money on the answer. And I definitely can make the trip quickly. This is so important because someone made mention that it's not the cafeteria manager's responsibility. I'm sorry. The principals don't make, yes, they do. Madam Chair said it. Yes, they do. You've got at least 3 up here.
Oh, yeah.
And we definitely would have a say. If we saw this in our schools, it's so important for people to know who are watching and listening. Oh, it was my joy, Dr. Gallen, to go to the cafeteria and get my lunch and my school day cookies, and the food was awesome. First of all, I knew the children that I had in my school. That might have been their last meal. Definitely was not going to be this. I don't recognize this. I don't know what's here. I don't know what is here. The very first picture, I don't know. And I would want to know if any manager or principal had ever seen this kind of display. I'm going to ask the question, are there students on this committee, the Wellness Committee? Through the chair.
No.
I don't think so.
Through the chair, the School Health Advisory Committee, no, they're not students on it at
No,
this
I
point.
said if there, I'm sorry, through the chair.
Yes.
If there are any on the committee. I heard someone say through the chair that they get to taste some of the food items.
Yes, and
Yes, yes, through the
I
chair.
believe that the members, I send a member of my staff. That member of my staff was there when they passed out.
Okay,
that
through
food, but
the
it's
chair.
not children.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, I think it's important that we get word from our students. If they're going to have to eat it, they should know what is there. Through the chair. One more. I remember when I was a principal that the menus were published. I don't know if they're still published. They are.
Yes.
You
Yes.
remember?
They're supposed to be.
You remember through the chair?
Yes?
Through the chair, the menus are still published.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Through the chair, where?
They're published on the Food and Nutrition website.
Okay, so parents, through the chair, parents will
Through
not,
the chair.
if they don't go there, they would not know what the children are eating.
On
the
the,
chair.
through the chair, on the Food and Nutrition website is the primary place. There are some schools who may actually posted as well, but the primary place is the Food and Nutrition website through the chair.
Okay, thank you for that. We might need to look into that because as a former principal, I knew what my children were eating for the entire week. Thank you for that. Through the chair, do we have the same menu as I was saying earlier at all schools, or is there a difference? Through the chair.
It's not the same menu at all schools, right?
Yes, we're available.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, it is the same menu where the items are available. We must state that sometimes there are delivery items that don't get delivered as of lately, and that's as a result of the pandemic. So in that case, the manager is charged with ensuring that their nutritional value for every meal is on every plate. So therefore, we will be addressing the pictures that are before you on a holistic basis. But yes, the menu is supposed to be the same, but not all the time, depending on supply.
Okay, one last one, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Then this gives me another reason to visit my schools.
Yep.
And visit them at lunchtime. And I can make that decision myself. Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Thank you, Madam
And
Chair.
through
Thank
the
you,
chair,
Dr. Pace.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I'd also like to add that the menu is on the parent app as well.
Okay.
It is available on the parent app.
Okay, thank you very much for all your help.
Thank you, Dr.
Madam Chair.
Bendels-Benigal. I know that Dr. Gallen wants to also ask, but let me just ask you very quickly, do you still serve beefaroni? It used to be amazing when I was a teacher, actually, during those days. I just wonder if do you still have that on the menu? The kids loved it.
Through the chair, I have to follow up to see if that is a menu item.
Thank you, let me know. So Dr. Gallen, sir, and then I see the superintendent is here, so maybe he can also give some clarity on this particular issue. Dr. Gallen, sir?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just kind of button it up in a certain format. Once again, I appreciate Dr. Pace and his team affirming that the receipt of such communications and concerns are not isolated to what I received. I appreciate that. Secondly, I know that it was intimated relative to the pictures, and the word was used, if. Rest assured, this is from our schools. Those who know me and know how I operate, I don't throw schools or people under the bus. And when you have that kind of access to a greater extent, people proclaim to trust you. I can source these schools. I can definitely source them, but I think it's inconsequential for me to do that. But I just wanted to say that for the record. If anyone thinks that there was a random Google search for school lunches and I printed them out, then, God help us all. Got enough things to do than to deal with this. Parents and stakeholders will reach out. And I know this is this committee, but I'm going to juxtapose this source of information to another issue that happened day before yesterday. Staff responded. I contacted the chief of staff, Mr. Superintendent, around 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, when I received a call from a parent regarding a school issue. The school issue was a school in District 1, and I keep calling you Dr. Bendels-Benigal because you had something that dropped out of the ceiling in one of your schools. The school in District 1, Dr. Perez, the parent shared that after the rain came, they had large garbage cans with the water was coming through the ceiling. This was 9-something at night. I got the call. I assured the parent that I would follow up the next morning, but I had already spoken to the chief of staff. He assured that he would follow up. Yesterday, I don't just say confirm and verify, Ms. Hampton, from the dais. I confirm and verify in practice. It was represented that someone would be there to follow up, which I trust and have the greatest degree of confidence in the people who said that they would be there to follow up the next morning. But by the time I had gotten there, they had not gotten there. And I gotten there by 11 o'clock. It was, in fact, water coming from the ceiling. It was, in fact, a situation in the middle of the instructional program, large garbage cans that was to receive that. And it was, in fact, something that was a gap. I'll save this for facilities, Mr. Perez and Mr. Torrance. It was a gap in the quality controls based on some construction that took place. Something that I may have known to do, but wasn't done. When I say not leaking, flowing, not a leak, but a flow of water. Obviously, that's being addressed, and our role and our responsibility and our right is to convey those things and trust that the administration, which I do trust when I bring it to their attention, will follow up. I bring that example is I can prove what I'm told. So this is a situation where I could literally get in the car and traverse to the schools of which some of these came from. I can source the individuals. I don't know them, but on social media, I've confirmed that they are educators. You can watch their page, and this is what they've shared. And obviously, they may share with a parent that says, inbox them, inbox them, inbox them. But that's something I'm going to leave to the administration, but I just had to say for the record. And I don't think anybody doubts it, but anytime I hear the word if with anything that I put forth, then I'm ready at any time to push my chips in the middle of the table and prove. And I gave you an example that's less than 24 hours prior, yesterday. Parents said this was the case. Go to the school. This is the case. Thank God for our parents and our advocates who communicate with us, and thank God for each and every one of us for being accessible for them and for them having that level of trust. So, and lastly, again, Dr. Pace, thank you and your team for acknowledging that this is not an isolated case. And thank you, colleagues, for your feedback, and I look forward to some follow-up on this particular matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Gallen. I was going to call the superintendent, but first I have Board Member Santos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we all appoint people to the Student District Wellness Advisory Committee, and I know that at the October 19th presentation, and I'm intimately familiar with this because it was the industry that I was in for so long, there have been significant challenges that have been presented, where there's case limitations, et cetera, and I think that committee has been pushing and saying, let's get creative to find the solutions necessary given the challenges we are facing, which are significant. And at the end of the day, not a reason to give our students anything like what we saw. I'll say anecdotally that I've been at a lot of schools in the last few weeks, and I do check lunches when I'm there, and fortunately, I have not seen something like what was in the pictures. And the last thing I'll say, it's tangentially related, but since it came up, Dr. Perez, I'll highlight that the Clean Energy Task Force has had a lot of discussions around bringing back silverware and the benefits that could actually have, and I know there's very valid concerns, but something that group is also advocating for. So lots of overlap between our committees, and I'm glad to see they're doing the work. I would like to see their recommendations be taken more seriously and responded to in real time.
Thank you, Board Member Santos. And before I go to the superintendent, today's menu, according to what is written, is one thing. I don't know according to what is actually being served. I don't know. We'll have to check it out. But it says today is picadillo, potato baked with broccoli, chef salad, and then you have a banana, lettuce with mixed Florida fresh, vegetarian black beans, and brown rice. And those are the options for today's menu, the 10th of November. That's what's being printed.
Just quick question.
Yes.
Those menu items, are they prepared or are they pre-prepared? Like I know back in the day, we had our cafeteria staff that would cook, and you had who was the cook. That was their title. This is the cook. Are they prepared or are they pre-prepared and warmed up? Through the chair.
Through the chair, the items are prepared on the day of serving. However, there are things that come, such as the juice packets and things of that nature, the fruit, that is already pre-prepared and added to the tray, but the food is cooked at the school.
Follow up, Madam Chair. So all of the food items are actually cooked at the school, or are they warmed up and prepared? That's what I'm trying, like, there's a like, is it something that's already there and they have to warm it up, or do they actually prepare it and actually serve it that way through the chair?
Through the chair, I would need to follow up to give you a more direct answer, but some of the items are prepared at the school. We do have some items that come in prepackaged that are warmed and prepared, but to give you a direct answer of which items, I will need to follow up through the chair.
Follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. You actually
Yes.
answered the question. You said some are cooked and some are then warmed. So your first answer was they're cooked, but now you've made the clarification that some are cooked and some are already prepared to be warmed. So there's a difference between that presentation. So you answered the question.
Through the
Thank
chair,
you.
yes.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, sir?
Thank you. So the part of the conversation that I captured, and I was in my office dealing with some school side issues, but I was simultaneously monitoring the discussion. Number one, let me provide you my perspective. I am fastidious about what I eat. I'm fastidious about what I see in schools, in cafeterias, every time, and staff knows this, every time I visit a school. In addition to classroom inspections and walkthroughs, I go into the restrooms and I go into the cafeteria. We know if everything is right in the restroom, probably everything is right in the rest of the school. Yes, I do believe, number one, to emphatically clarify some things that were discussed. The menus are online. I have checked as I visit a school, because you're absolutely right. A number of years back, we put the menus online. They can be accessed through the parent portal or the application. And I would say the vast majority of cases, there is alignment between what's on a menu and what's really being served in the school. But I have, being very honest, come across instances where there was a disconnect. And Mr. Cohn is right. Sometimes the disconnect is that that school did not get a delivery of a certain commodity or a food group. And then, obviously, respecting the caloric intake that's required, some other alternative is provided, usually not to the same level, in my opinion, of quality that the kids would have gotten. Secondly, to the point that I think a number of you made, by the way, for me, there's no if. I believe absolutely the veracity of those images that Dr. Perez shared with me, because I have fished for them online, and sometimes the easiest way, which I actually love to receive, is when a student sends it to me or tags me. Then I see it. If I'm not tagged, as you may imagine, it may be difficult to find the picture, but often kids actually tag me. And board members, the one thing I do is I send it directly, a screenshot or the link to that tweet or that picture to staff. Sometimes I will direct message the student saying, what school do you attend? I react the same way to a significant bus delay, an air conditioning issue, and I get all those hits. So even at my level, I don't ignore them. There's a shared responsibility, and there's a constant inspection of the expectation that I think is necessary and important. And I, too, am shocked when I see some of these visuals, whether sometimes it's the quantity that was served, or, and I do get that sometimes. You say, you know, I'm an athlete, and this is not enough food for me. I've received those. I address them directly. Or what appears to be a qualitative concern, right? The quality of the food, not the quantity. I've also come across cases where the student walks the line, and I've seen this a lot of times at the elementary school level, where there are options, and what the student decides to put on the plate is not the best quality option. And I do speak with the principal, and I do speak with the cafeteria manager, because I do think that leadership has a degree of responsibility in ensuring that the kid does not pick up simply that slice of pizza, nothing else, no vegetables, nothing else. But I do see that a lot. Sometimes kids put on the plate what appeals to them, and what appeals to them is not what is best for them. And then, of course, there's also the occasion where, for a number of reasons, I've seen this, where there are multiple shifts for lunch, that the earlier shifts get everything, the later shift, they've run out of some items, and that is a concern. I've seen it happening with the healthier options, where the salads are gone, and this is a give and take. When I ask the cafeteria manager, why are there no salads available now? He said, well, we prepared X number of salads, and they've already been exhausted, right? And that's not acceptable. And then the last thing is, I have to say, and I'm not going to use the P word anymore, the pandemic, but there are some relevance to this. We used to do the taste test kitchen and take a great deal of pride, where we would invite actually students to taste the new food items. And we invited the board. The board used to show up, and the kids would give us feedback on the food. Obviously, over the past 2 years, we have not done that. So I do see, and again, this is not an exact scientific measure, but I do believe I'm seeing a higher number of postings dealing with this issue. That puts us in a position of not only being, not only reacting to it, but actually taking some degree of proactive actions regarding the availability, the supply chain to the schools, better upfront planning for the commodities that should be in the schools consistent with the menus. And then lastly, and I think this is addressed through the additional professional development days are being contemplated for particularly AFSCME personnel, is really spending a great deal more time on the quality of what's served and how to ensure that kids are actually putting on their tray a better, healthier option than what we see in some of those pictures. My take is that those pictures are real. I've seen them, and I've seen, in some instances, even worse examples of that. I don't know if it was breakfast or lunch. Sometimes it is confusing to me. It is not acceptable, and I think it's a function of training. It's a function also of awareness for the children and the parents in terms of best selection. It's a function of better planning for the week ahead, and it's also a function of reinstating our previous approach of having these taste test kitchens where students have a role that they actually taste it, and the awareness consistent with that. And then finally, it's a matter of doing these random secret shopper kind of experiences where whether it is you or I or any one child reporting to us what they're eating and the consistency across the district. I can tell you that I've also seen, and this is not an indictment of anyone, and I actually, prior to the pandemic, I used to do this. I used to warn principals. I will take to social media and compliment great food displays and great food availability. And simultaneously, I would have privately conversations about what I don't like with the pictures in hand that I took with my own cell phone. Cabinet knows this. I've been doing this for a long time. And there is some degree of inconsistency of food display, preparation, and availability. More often than not is explained by what Mr. Cohn and Dr. Pace explained. Sometimes there are delivery issues. But I think from a human professional perspective, more and better can be done as well. So this issue has my attention, has always had my attention. I am familiar with some of those pictures, and they shall not be ignored.
Thank you. We appreciate that because the children deserve nothing less than that. Mr. Superintendent, just for my own clarity, I thought you just said a moment ago that they have choices and the kids sometimes will get something that is not in their best interest, correct? Did I understand that correctly?
That is absolutely correct. So a child can walk the line and pick up a salad, the fruit, the milk, or juice, etc. They can pick up a piece of pizza and say, I don't want the fruit. And I've seen that. And I actually sometimes ask, why not? They make a choice. And there is not what has been lacking, despite the training that we provide, and I think we need to redouble our efforts, is that customer insistence or satisfaction level of interaction between the cafeteria staff and the students themselves.
But is that
So-
the case, sir, in elementary schools? Because I thought elementary schools don't get a choice and they get a tray served. So is now the elementary schools get a choice as well?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cohn, but I believe absolutely. Students have an option of salads instead of some of the items that are put before them, but they do have options even at the elementary level.
Right. So if I go to an elementary school, I'm going to see them being able to choose instead of those children being given a tray with whatever they're going to be eating. Is that?
Ms. Rojas, I can
Accurate.
assure you that this actually been my insistence, that the green stuff and the salads be moved to the head of the line rather than the back of the line or behind the serving station. Students have options. You can have a hot meal, you can have a salad, sometimes there are sandwich options. Obviously, the options are more varied at the secondary level, but at the elementary school level, I've seen it. Students can opt for a salad or a number of other options.